Good evening from Vietnam. Good morning to you, Tony. Thanks a lot for coming to the Inside Sharing Show and share your stories to our global audience. And on behalf of the listeners around the world, we want to say thank you.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
Hey, Tony. The last time we talked, you already understand our culture. I just want to have a blessing from you again. If you can do a little introductions about who you are and the work you are doing for our audience, it's going to be a very honor for us to have you doing that. Would you please do so?
Absolutely. I'm so thrilled to be here, and I'll just start by saying my name is Tony Martignetti, and I come to you from Boston, Massachusetts. And the work I do is I'm a leadership advisor and coach who works with people who are wanting to make a big impact in the world without burning out. So I do that with one-on-one coaching as well as doing facilitation of workshops and team development facilitation. And I also write books and run my own podcast and do all types of fun things. So yes, that's what I do. And my company's called Inspired Purpose Partners.
Inspired Purpose Partner. Okay. And Tony, thanks a lot for reintroducing about yourself to our global audience. And congratulations on the newest book that you launched. Tell us about it.
Absolutely. The book is called Campfire Lessons for Leaders, How Uncovering Your Past Can Propel You Forward. And the book is about, at the core of it all, it's really about this idea that the more we understand our story and connect with who we are, the better we can connect with others. And it came from 240 episodes of my podcast, the stories that I really connected with in terms of my guests coming on and what they shared with me. I realized there was a lot there that I wanted to share with the world. And the lessons that I learned from that, I created this path for people to say, well, how can I use those lessons to help me uncover my story, to really connect with what I've done in my journey and make sure that I learn from it so that I can use it to connect with others. And there's a couple of questions and prompts on the end of each chapter to help you explore deeper and to use it to uncover who you really are.
Wow. So since when you had the idea to write that book?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first time I really thought about writing this book was when I had a few conversations on the podcast, and I said, there's something here. There's something that I need to uncover, and these conversations are too precious and too powerful that I can't just limit it to the people listening. And that's what really prompted me to want to do the book. But maybe I'll go a little further back and say what prompted me to even do the podcast. And, for the reality is I never thought I would actually create a podcast. I wasn't listening to podcasts before I created one, which is weird. I created the podcast because the pandemic forced me into creating it. I really wanted to create a space for people to come together and do it in person. I wanted what I call divergent minds, convergent hearts. And that evolved into something where I had to have a virtual world for people to come together. And instead of a group, it was a one-on-one conversation.
Wow. And how long did it take you to write the book?
It was about a year. Give or take a year. And the great thing about it is that a lot of the components were there already, but the crafting of the book took a lot of effort because I wanted to get it right. There's a lot of responsibility I have to the people who are featured to make sure I take their stories and handle it with care. There's a lot of really personal stories and things that I've shared, and I had to connect the dots with, like, how does this connect with the theme, the lessons and the things that we're trying to share. And so that part of it made it challenging, fun, I guess, but also not easy.
So who's the target audience for the book?
It's really for anyone who's going through one of those moments where they start questioning, what do I want to put out into the world? Who am I really? And, what do I want my next chapter to look like? So it's about leaders, because I often think about we're all leaders in our own way. And I think a lot of us questioned who we are coming out of the pandemic, and still questioning a lot about who we are as we navigate the years out of the pandemic. And we think about, what is my life meant for? And who do I want to be connected to as I move forward? And so that's the big question we want to, pose to people as we leave this is, how can I create connection with the right people to ensure that I deepen my relationships?
Wow. Those are really the meta questions, the big questions that is really, really hard to get an answer. So you wrote the book to help people find the answer. Teach us some lesson in there so that, so that we can learn directly from you. Then we read the book later. Is that okay?
Absolutely. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the best thing we can start with in terms of one of the lessons from the book is the first chapter is about how we can create the world that we want. If there's something missing in the world that we don't see, then sometimes we're called upon to create that. So what I mean by that is this. Sometimes we look around and we say, okay, well, something's missing for me. I wish I had support in a challenge I have, or something that I wish I had in the world. And if you don't see it, sometimes you're called upon to create it. I'll use this example, okay? A woman by the name of Effie Park. Effie Park is a wonderful person. She was the mother of this. She's the mother of a child with rare disease, a very, very rare disease, but she felt very alone because she didn't know where to find other people like her, other people going through the same challenges as her. So she started to seek out communities where she could feel like the people understood her. Eventually, she found that she had to create that community. She created a podcast that reached out to other people having the same challenge as she was, to share their stories, amplify their voices. And it really created a movement. So she created this world for her, but also served others in the process.
Beautiful.
Make sense?
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. And like my wife, that's coincidentally during lunch that we had today, my wife taught our children also about the way that they can look at the world. Like in the light you can see darkness, and in the darkness you can also see light. If and whether or not you want to create that light. So Tony, I will tell her that story, okay? And then you are doing that too. You are creating the community to spread the goodness, to help leaders get better and leading well, right? So yeah.
I love that you say that, because that's exactly it. I mean, and that leads to I think it's the second chapter, but it could be the third chapter. One of the chapters is out of darkness comes light. And it speaks to this idea that, like, sometimes our darkest moments are opportunities for us to say, what am I learning from the darkest moment I've experienced, whether it be, being on the verge of a suicidal ideation, or, a near-death experience, and what can we pull out of that experience to then have a movement or catalyst for something else. And people talk about what's called post-traumatic growth syndrome, or post-traumatic growth experience, where you are near death, but then you grow out of that. And I think that is a powerful thing to tap into, because oftentimes you could go on to create something really powerful from that. And some of the stories that I share in the book are around that, those types of experiences. But even just thinking about, like, someone who, survives cancer and then decides that, I want to help others who are struggling with, dealing with cancer.
Tony, so go to the personal question for you. Why did you embark this journey though?
Yeah. Well, for me, I always had what's called these flash, I'll kind of, let me explain it first. So as the podcast and the work I do, I talk about these things called flashpoints. Flashpoints are these points in your journey that have ignited your gifts into the world. And they could be dark moments, or they could be moments that just had you thinking through things differently. And so, I thought about my own journey of having flashpoints and the things that have ignited my gifts in the world. And I had a few that really had me wanting to get other people to think, how can I use those moments that were challenging in my life to be catalysts for something beautiful? And I think that's why I embarked on this journey, because my life was like that. I had moments when I was sitting in a boardroom and, decided that I can't do this any longer. I can't be the person who sits here and tolerates bad leadership. And I decided to walk out. Wow. Without a plan. And so that's, I've also been on the verge of, really deep, dark depression and not having a plan for, moving forward. And so, yeah, those moments challenge you and they make you think, okay, who am I? What am I here for? And when you do that, you start to kind of move in the direction of, okay, I got to find the purpose that I'm here for. As I often say, our inspired purpose is so important. When you get that lightning bulb of like, yeah, this is what I'm meant for, then you can move very, very much, intentionally in towards the thing that's important to you.
Teach us in your experience on finding your own purpose and refining the purpose that Tony is looking for. Tell us about that journey, please.
Yeah, it's not an easy path, but it definitely was one where I had spent a lot of time, being this finance and strategy professional in the biotech industry, and I was successful. And sometimes success can hide a lot of things. When things are going well, they don't have you questioning a lot. But when you start to come to that place where the pattern that you're in stops serving you, you start burning out, and you realize, wait a minute, maybe I was doing something that wasn't really for me in the first place. And that's what had me, coming to that dark place. My purpose started to come from this place of questioning and saying, I don't feel lit up any longer. I don't have that, I don't feel fully alive. And I started to realize that my purpose was coming from this desperation of feeling the color of my life had gone out and the light had gone out. And slowly but surely, I started to fill it in with the things that I most enjoy. What does make me come alive? And what I realized is my purpose was about helping others to find their masterpiece, the masterpiece inside of them, and to unearth that masterpiece through conversations that make them come alive.
Beautiful, beautiful. Hey, Tony, tell us, because the leaders normally are the people really good at what they are doing, right? And they will put on a program to help them to grow so that they can lead the team better. They went through a lot of learning and a lot of experience also. But while along the way, they fail to see certain things that make their works become less of a happy source for themselves. Then of course it's not going to be a happy source for the employees, the people they are leading also. So what happened to them?
Yeah, I think it's not that anyone has a bad intention or there's a sense of people come to work as a leader comes to work feeling like that I want to make things bad for other people. the intention is that they want to do the best thing, but they lose their way because they get so clouded by all of the things that they feel like they need to do, and they feel this pressure, and the pressure builds up, and before you know it, they lose themselves in the process. If you remember, my first book was about climbing the right mountain, and in that process, sometimes we lose our way, and we have to kind of step away and say, what am I creating? Is it still aligned with who I am and who I want to be? Have I decided what success looks like for me? And when they start to get intentional, then they can start to get better at understanding what other people want for them. And sometimes that's hard to do because we need other people to see that in us. We get blind to the way that we're showing up. So that's why it's good to have coaches, mentors, and other people to reflect back and say, hey, this is something about what you're showing up right now that's not working. And, you need to take a step back and maybe check in with yourself to see if you can adjust course on what you're doing.
So is there a way that we can see the symptoms that we are going in a different direction at the moment and need to, have that conversation with our coach or mentor or like self-talk to see to find that check-in?
Yeah, there's two things that come to mind around that. Number one, to do it for yourself, the best thing you can do is to have what I call a leadership vision, right? A leadership vision is something that I do with my clients where I have them decide who is a leader that I want to be. What does it look like? What kind of a leader do I want to embody? And once you have that, it's like it becomes your North Star, if you will, where you're able to come to that and say, okay, am I leading the way I said I wanted to? And can, if I wake up tomorrow and read that statement and say, am I connected to that still? And if I'm not, I don't have evidence that says that I am, then maybe it's time for me to make some changes. And then the second way is to ask people, hey, I'm always trying to improve myself, and I always want to do best by you and others around me. What can I do? What are the things you're seeing in me that I could improve? It doesn't have to be by going to a coach or an external, but it could be the people you manage. Letting them know that you want their feedback and you're willing to give them feedback if they're willing to receive it.
Wow! So the vision, the little vision board, right? And then they asking others for their feedbacks, and then look at the feedback to see to find the areas for improving. Right? So
yeah,
Tony, there's a lot of changes. There have been a lot of changes over the past couple of years, right? And for sure, with the technologies that keep on, changing and revolutionize like at the moment, there's a lot of things that leaders need to improve upon also, in order for them to avoid burnout and lead more effectively. Okay, so that may be the old management, the old leadership, practices and knowledge that we had might be obsolete and then replaced by something else, right? So what worked in the past now and still present, what do we as leaders need to improve on?
Yeah, there's two things that come to mind. And number one, I would say it's we have to get better at communicating and connecting. I put those in the same camp because I think they're definitely related. As technology changes, as the pace of change continues to accelerate, the better we are at communicating with people around us, then the better off we're going to be as leaders. And connection is an important part of that. If you're connected with the people around you, then they're going to understand you better. They're going to want to help you. They're going to trust you because they're feeling connected to who you are. Even when you falter, they're going to be okay with that. And this, we'll talk about AI for a second here and just say, even with AI, it's going to require us to be more communicative as a society. We have to communicate even better. That's one part. The other part is adaptability. We have to be able to adapt. I mean, with the pace of change and with the types of things that are being thrown at us, our ability to adapt is going to be even stronger, which means we can't hold on to things that, ideas that we think are true, all, so steadfast. It can't be like, that has to be true, or my idea is the idea that we have to stick with. We have to be okay with being wrong and saying, okay, what else is possible? Because an idea that we think is true and right one day, the next day could be completely false because external factors have made it so.
Yeah. So communication and connections, right? Is one. The second one is adaptability. Then I want to talk about connection. All right.
Yes.
When we were little, it seems like we can connect to anybody, right? And then making really good conversation with almost anyone that we encounter with. But what's wrong with us when we're growing up and getting to the top of the ladder, and then we go so lonely? So the connection is not there anymore. So what happened to us on the path to success?
Yeah. I mean, as you get to different parts of your journey as a leader, and senior parts of the more senior you are, and I will also say, as you become an entrepreneur who works for themselves, a solopreneur, it can be lonely, and we have to be more intentional about their connections. And I think that's where, as much as it can be lonely, you don't have to be that way. In my book, I talk about this idea that we shouldn't go it alone, and we have to look for people who can support us, champion us, and help us along, because ultimately we can't do anything of meaning without other people. So don't try to. And that loneliness that people often talk about at the top, it's a feeling that's very real, but also something that we self-impose.
So normally it's a two-way street also, right, Tony? So the boss want to make that connection, but the employees also, have a tendency of avoiding the leaders because they try to stay away from, like potential issue that could happen, right? So how can, if a leader is feeling lonely and he wants to make change, he wants to make that connection again with the employees that he's leading, the people he's leading, what could he do differently to recreate that venue for the people to come and have a conversation though?
Yeah, I think the best thing you can do it is doing it in a way that feels natural, but also intentionally connecting. And I mean by that is, I've created this workshop that's called Campfires of Connection. And what I've done is I've created a way for companies to come together and do things where, instead of just trying to do it, in the middle of meetings or in the beginning of meetings where you're trying to get to know people and what have you, instead it's about setting a container for a meeting that's really about getting to know people at a deeper level, and allowing that to be a space for everyone to say, hey, I want to know more about you. I want to know more about who you are, where you come from, what are the things that make you who you are, what is your story, so that we can better connect, and ultimately through that build a stronger company.
I want to go back to the book a little bit, okay? So how many chapters are there in the book? How many stories total?
There's a total of 10 chapters, 10 lessons. And in those 10 lessons, I bring together about, besides the key lessons, there's also some about 28 different people who I feature in the book, which I honestly, I could have featured a whole lot more. In fact, I wrote a much longer book. It's probably going to be ready for another book coming soon. So I had to edit a lot of people out.
Yeah. So you already introduced to us two of them already. All right. So there's 8 left. So out of the 8, if there's one story that that you really really like out of the 8? And I know the question is not fair, but you need to pick one. Now, which one would that be? And tell us.
It's a good question. I'll choose one that I really enjoy sharing, and it is like, it's about fighting for what you believe in. And when you find something that you really believe in, it takes a lot of conviction, a lot of guts to continue to move forward and really champion that cause. But you don't have to necessarily do it all by yourself. You start by believing in something, but you have to also have the ability to engage other people in the process. So some of the people who I feature in the book have been able to create movements because of the fact that they had a strong belief in something, a cause that really moved them, and they've made a huge impact because of it.
Somebody need to write a book sharing the same thing about you, right? On that ballroom, and then you believe there is a wrong, that something needs to change. And then that conviction makes you to left the organization and start a new journey that is a lot meaningful for yourself and and for others people also, right, Tony?
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So if you talk about the next book, has there been any idea for the next one coming?
Well, I do have an idea of a book, but I'm not in a huge rush to write it. It will be around this idea that's called grounded leadership, which is something that I talk a bit about in the book and in Campfire Lessons, but it's just touching the surface. Grounded leadership to me is about this idea of how do we stay grounded in chaotic times. And I think this is already something I teach a lot of people I work with, but I want to create a pathway for this to become a movement. When you're grounded in chaotic times, it's about being an intentional leader. It's about being somebody who can create that sense of calmness for other people around you, but also not be someone who doesn't do the hard things. When you're grounded, it's waiting to make the big decisions, because you know that you can create some space before making the hard decisions. So that'll be the next book. It's dealing with chaos and embracing chaos, but also doing it in a way that allows us to be someone who can deal with it in the right way.
Beautiful, beautiful. Please make time to write it. I know that you say that you're not in a rush of doing that, but if we look at the horizon at the moment, seems like there will be a lot of more challenges for leaders around the world, in upcoming times, right? So they need to be build that grounded leadership style so that they can be, dealing effectively in chaos situations, right? And Tony, I personally, my wife and I really enjoy reading your newsletter, your articles, because it's never the same, and it's really broad in many different topics. One day you talk about productivity, one day you talk about innovation, one day you talk about curiosity, and then the next day you talk about something else. It's also really meaningful with a lot of practical insights in there. So you teach us.
Thank you.
Teach us how could you do to absorb all of that information and be able to write beautifully so that people can relate, can learn, and apply to their lives.
Well, first of all, I will take that. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. It took a lot of practice, and it's also because I'm curious about so many things. I have this insatiable curiosity about so many different areas that it's hard for me to focus in on just one thing and just go deep there. So in that way, I like to dig into lots of different perspectives, and I think keep it interesting, and not just for me, but for other people too. Knowing that why not have fun with exploring different areas. So that's why I do it. And that's why, as I practice and continue to hone my craft, I also have seen, it gets better. I think that's a good message for everyone, is that, you don't just show up and start making this, writing good stuff. The first few things I wrote, I'd be like embarrassed to share, but you start to get better over time.
Wow. So curiosity is a beautiful trait that really needed every time, not just in the turbulent time, but I think that every day, right?
Yes.
So for you have it naturally inside of you. Teach us how we can be curious and stay curious a little longer, Tony.
Oh, I love that. Curiosity, the best way you can really tap into it is to start thinking, what are the things that I haven't explored? What are some things that, I could spend time digging into and I haven't spent enough time, going deeper into, and go there. Sometimes, if you just kind of go beneath the surface of a topic, it will get you even more, it'll take you deeper.
Yeah.
And staying with that just a little bit longer allows your curiosity to take shape. And then you can also follow the threads. There's a thread that, let's say you get curious about one subject. What is a subject that's just nearby? Like, what is something that's right next to it? And then go and explore that. And before you know it, you start to kind of find this a whole slew of things you start to dig into. So I think that's where curiosity comes from, is the willingness to explore, but also to look at the tangents that are on the sides of it, and see what it opens up.
Oh, beautiful. So I'm curious to know the people in your life, Tony. So to say that our worth is the sum of the 5 people next to us, right? Closest into us.
Yeah.
So for you, if you choose somebody to put into that circle of 5, so what would that person have differently than others now?
Well, I like to surround myself with people who are, first of all, have a real humility, that they don't have all the answers, because, what I love about that is it helps me to feel that sense of like, let's figure it out together. Let's, spend time exploring and making mistakes and, figuring things out in that way. I also like people who challenge me too. So I like diverse thinkers. So I surround myself with different thinkers. And I love people from diverse backgrounds. I'm an artist at heart, and I love spending time with different types of artists and people who come from different backgrounds, because I think there's a great collision of different ideas that come together when you have people from different backgrounds. So I hope that answers your question, but I love spending time with lots of different people, because I feel as though when we do, we have this sense of always learning and also always being on our edge of growth.
Beautiful. And that's how you just share another article to help people to connecting with another people at the expos, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I'm about to head out to South by Southwest, which is in Austin, which is basically just that. It's an expo of musicians, artists, people who are on the tech, talking about tech and education. So it'll be fun. I'll let you know how it goes.
Absolutely. Hey, Tony, if you can travel time together and having a message with yourself back then when you was at the biotech company, and have a sentinel tool to talk to that Tony back then, what would you tell him?
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, I would say, things are going to get better, and if you're feeling like you're stuck, or that life is not quite as exciting as it is, just hang tight and keep on exploring, keep on having conversations, and slowly every conversation is going to open a new door to something else.
Beautiful. In this conversation, you mentioned this word a lot, and this is the word that my wife and I love the most also, which is think. Okay, so you say
Yeah.
think a lot in this conversation. So my wife and I, we've been on the quest to help people to improve their ability to think. That's our purpose. All right. We believe that our thinking capability this day has so many things impacting it, and we make it diminishing instead of increasing. You are a wonderful thinker, and we learn a lot from you. We want to learn also from you how you expand your ability to think. So the question for you, Tony, is how have you been improving your ability and expanding it over the years?
Well, first of all, I read a ton of books. I mean, I really, and they're not just one type of book. I mean, I read everything from art books to business books to nonfiction. And I think one of the things about that is that I don't read them cover to cover either. I do a lot of skimming and look for what's important to take away. And I also find myself in conversation with a lot of different people, which has me thinking differently, and which is interesting. People often think, well, don't you? People think by themselves, but our thinking gets improved by being in conversation with others.
Mm. So having
Would you
conversation,
agree?
I absolutely
Yeah.
agree. Yes, absolutely agree. So for you to be able to invite that 240 plus people onto your podcast during the pandemic, teach us some secret that you can connect and invite them though. Out there, definitely there are people out there listen to the conversation like this, would love to make connection, would love to have their own podcast and have that deep and meaningful
Mm.
conversations. So what is the secret that Tony is having that effectively making you connect and be able to invite people to come?
Well, first of all, it comes down to being able to ask. Asking people is it takes courage, and honestly, reaching out to people and saying, "Hey, there's something about what you share on out there in the world, and I really am impressed by your work." And it's not about like filling them up with stroking their ego, if you will, but it's more about being honest and real with them and saying what you're writing, what you're talking about resonates with me, and I think that you have a story I'd love to have to share with, have a conversation with you to share with the world. And through those conversations and those asks, you don't always get a yes, but oftentimes you get a yes, and people say, "Yeah, let's do this." Especially if you start to build up a few episodes where people say like, "Yeah, like I've listened to the show, and yeah, this works. It sounds good. The premise of the show makes me want to engage with this." But it started with just that, asking people, "What do you think? This is my premise. This is what I'd like to do, and I really love what you do."
Beautiful, beautiful. So without asking, we're not gonna have anything, right? So why not have the courage just to ask? Like you and I, I also approached to you and said, Tony, I really admire what you do, and would you like to share that stories? And that's how we become a friend like this. This beautiful how small the
Yeah.
world is. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, and there are people out there who say like, well, they ask all these questions like, well, how big's your audience, and how they ask all these questions. But for the people who really care, who are saying like, look, I've got to, I want to connect with other people. I want to share my message, and I think there is a connection here. Then they're going to be like, yeah, let's do this. Let's find time to make it work.
Mm-hmm. I have a last question for this conversation, Tony, and let's travel to the future a little bit. I know that in March you're gonna go to an expo, right? Is there anything else
Yeah.
that exciting that you're about to do? You want to share with me and the audience so we can celebrate with Tony in advance?
Ooh, I love that. Well, just after I get back from in March from the show from the expo, I'm going to be heading to do a talk in Vegas, Las Vegas,
Oh.
and it is called "Staying Grounded, Being the Calm in the Chaos." And so I'm really excited because it's again a topic that is really important to me, and I'm excited to bring that talk into the world. It's something that has really been important. So I'm excited about that.
What month is that? June?
It's in April.
Oh, in April. I'll be in the state in April. So well, I will follow up with you when I get there and see how the speaking event when share with us on that on. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just share one other thing, if you don't mind. I'm in the process of working on my next TED Talk. My first TED Talk is called "Don't Check Yourself at the Door: How to Share Your True Self in the Workplace." And it's been really a humbling experience, and that's what I put out last year. But the new one is coming. Well, I'm shopping it around. I'm hoping to have it on stage at some point this year. But I'm really excited about it. So hopefully you'll see another TED Talk from me.
Beautiful, and I'm sure it's going to be another successful with million views like the first one. And Tony, it's been a pleasure to meet you, and thanks a lot for spending your day your time with me and the audience. I look forward to a chance to meeting you in person. So if you travel to Asia, make sure you put Vietnam on the list, and let's have a tour together and something like that. That would be exciting. Okay.
I would love that.
Yeah.
I would love that. Thank you so much.
My friend, have a wonderful month of March and say hello to your family for us, please.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.